So my buddy Bob and I are finishing up our drive today, and he is a half-ton Dodge owner. So he went through the buying process of deciding on a half-ton truck, just like many of you guys either have or you're debating on what you want to do. And we're riding right now in my truck. And I thought we could have a short little conversation about half-tons versus stepping up to the 3/4 ton or 1 ton, which, I mean, they're basically the same trucks. So why would you want to get a half-ton? Why would you want to get an 8-lug truck? We'll just call them instead of calling them each individuals. And what are the major differences between the two? I've driven a lot of half-tons. I own a half-ton Expedition, and that is the extent of my current half-ton ownership. And maybe Bob can fill us in a little bit. When you went through your buying process, Bob, what was the major factor that A, made you pick the Dodge half-ton, and also what made you pick a half-ton in general versus any other truck you might want to buy?
So, I not only occasionally haul trailers with my truck, but I also wanted to be able to take long trips with the vehicle and not pulling the trailer. And the thing that drove me to the truck I got is how kind of utilitarian or universal it is. It has a shorter bed, but it has a really big back cab. So that allows more comfort for passengers, and when I don't have passengers, it allows me more storage space out of the elements.
So it sounds like there's a whole lot of empty and comfort in your purchase decision. I think that's something that half-tons do exceedingly well. The space that they offer, and also the reasonable ingress and exit of the vehicle. Half-tons are just so much lower and so much easier to get in and out. I'll tell you right now, with the current crop of HD trucks, GMs in general being shorter than Ford and Dodge. If you're hurt, if you have a bad hip, if you have a bad knee, or if you screw yourself up, maybe you have a bad flipper, separate your shoulder like I did, or break your arm or whatever, you're gonna have a really hard time getting in and out of these things at stock height. No lift kit required. They can be a little bit of a bear to get in and out of. And I think that a lot of people go to half-tons specifically for empty interior comfort. So they're bringing their family, they're bringing their dogs, they're bringing stuff, potentially, that isn't crazy big. And they're covering miles, they're covering distance, so they get good fuel economy, and getting in and out is so much easier. When I get into his truck, as opposed to being a step up, it's really kind of a lateral, sit and maybe a little bit of a move. It is much more comfortable. And I'll tell you right now, if I ever had him pick me up at the hospital, I'd ask him to bring not my truck and bring his vehicle. So that is something that I think matters a lot. What about towing, Bob? You towed up your bigger 4-place snowmobile trailer with a whole bunch of quads on it. And that was probably one of the longer tows you've done lately, or potentially with that specific truck. How did it behave for you? Did you feel that was kind of toward maybe out of the truck's comfort zone, or was that still within the truck's comfort zone, towing wise?
It was within its comfort zone. It's an aluminum snowmobile trailer, but it is quite wide. It's 101 inches. It's a deck over, so the tires are underneath of it. But I also have these additional ramps in the front of the trailer that stick up 4 feet, but the skirting on it is maybe only 2 or 2.5 feet, and they also kind of act as a wind block.
For sure, there's a lot of windage with that trailer, for sure.
Yeah, so it does create windage. My Dodge is a 2020, and it has an 8-speed transmission. I found that sometimes you can keep it in 7th gear, but a lot of times it likes 6th gear.
And that's the 1-to-1 gear in a ZF8. And I find it's so interesting to me that we've gone to all these extra gears. And even, for instance, with this truck, when you're towing a lot of weight, and unless you're going over about 64 or 65, you might get into the first overdrive with a lot of weight, for instance, 12, 14, 15, 17,000 pounds, a lot of weight. You're going to be mostly in 7th, and maybe you might touch into 8th as you get going a little bit faster. A lot of people have a contention of very negative opinion of older trucks, like with a Turbo 400 or a Ford C6 or something like that, that is a 3-speed transmission. And it's funny that all the way here in 2023 or 2020, that you're still towing in 1-to-1. So it doesn't matter that it's an 8-speed or whatever, you're still towing in the same gear that would be third gear in a Turbo 400 or third gear in a C6. I think that that's a funny realization that at the end of the day, power is still a limiting factor, and you still need to have gear ratio to help you. You can't just be in overdrive all the time. And as soon as you start towing, multiple overdrives tend to not be on your side unless you have a lot of ratio. And that's why I advocate on this channel a lot for don't buy the lowest numerical ratio that you can, in my opinion, because I don't see it gaining you anything. You're just going to end up running less of your speeds in your transmission to accomplish the same task. I would rather be able to get into 7th and be able to get into maybe even 8th with more ratio. We looked at your build sheet. Wasn't it a 323 ratio in your truck, Bob? I think it was.
Yeah, or 321.
Yeah, you know what? It might have been 321. Because we were talking about maybe it was 308, but it actually turned out to be 321. I don't know, because I'm not in any way.
If I had 355s, I'd probably be a little heavier at times.
Yeah.
The thumb is pretty much flat where I live, but certainly driving up north, you can come across some hilly situations.
For sure. And when you get in those hilly situations, you end up having your transmission cycle a little bit through gears to try and find the right spot for you. Did you notice your truck going into... Do you have a light on your dashboard that shows MDS mode, like when it's in 4-cylinder mode? Does it like tell you that it is?
Mine doesn't do that.
Does your truck not have MDS at all?
No.
Oh, well, I assumed it did.
Nope.
So I thought, honestly, I did. See, I'm learning something today. I thought all the 5.7s had MDS. So,
in my opinion, it's less BS to do.
Exactly. So less BS is definitely good. I'm not a terribly big fan of shutting off cylinders either. Generally speaking, there's usually... But then again, people say that lifters that aren't MDS lifters are also failing too in the same engine. So maybe it doesn't hold a lot of water, but it seems like to me when you go shutting off a lifter, you're gonna heavily disrupt the oil flow around that lifter and prevent the roller from getting proper oil. But that's probably not 100% how it works, but I would, again, prefer to not. The 7.3 that we're driving right now, 734, does not have any cylinder deactivation, and I really like that about it. What about payload? When you go, and I know you've put at least some stuff in your bed, though I know you're pretty easy on your truck. How does your truck with the coil suspension hold up to some weight put in it, Bob? And you happen to know your payload off the top of your head?
I don't. I have a bighorn, so I do have the biggest rear axle for the half-ton, even though my gear ratio is not that low. I would personally like to add something to my rear suspension, so when I do haul a little bigger trailer, not so much my snowmobile trailer, but I have an equipment trailer that I occasionally can haul my tractor on. And I have like a 4,000-pound tractor. I prefer not to squat as much.
Gotcha. I think that is a common sentiment among basically every truck owner out there, is when they don't have the payload capacity, whether it be the door sticker or whether it just be the physical, what is the truck capable of hauling, I can just look at my truck and say, just because it's rated at 4,000 pounds, it's squatting like crazy at 4,000 pounds. So maybe to me, it's not rated for that. Seems like with everyone, more is always preferred. So I would recommend in your buying process that you be very careful what you're buying and make sure that it has more than enough rated payload. Because if you put the exact, well, first of all, payload includes the driver, your dog, your car seat, your child, your wife, before you put stuff in your bed, and before you put a trailer hitch on the truck, and before you hook the trailer to it. So keep in mind, all of that is part of your payload number. Your payload doesn't just mean how much you can put in your bed and just mean how much trailer hitch you could, or trailer weight you can put on the truck. You got to keep in mind, if you have a toolbox, if you have people in it, which you'd have to have at least one person, I would think, and any other things you might have in your truck, there's always a premium of payload. So keep that in mind when you're searching. I would venture a opinion that 2,000 pounds might seem like a lot of payload. It gets eaten up awfully quickly. It is not difficult to have 600 to 800 pounds on a trailer hitch, and then you have, say, a 30-pound trailer hitch or a 20-pound trailer hitch, or God forbid it's heavier. And then you have potentially, tools in your truck. You got some stuff in your bed if you're going camping or whatever. You have people in your truck. If your truck has 5 seats and you put 150-pound person in each seat, and granted, I think a lot of us Americans aren't 150 pounds, you can add up some really big numbers really, really fast. And keep in mind, the farther the weight is behind the rear axle, i.e. a trailer hitch, the bigger impact it has on your truck. If you put 600 pounds of tongue weight on your truck, it's going to squat a lot more than if you were to put 600 pounds in the front of your bed. So err on the side of extreme caution when purchasing, because they definitely can squat. And when they squat a lot, it affects your headlamp illumination. Now, some of these new vehicles have compensating headlamps that aim down. I don't think your truck has that, does it? My truck doesn't either.
No.
But I do know that they make that. And I think, again, we talk about added things that go wrong, but in the first portion of the ownership process, that's probably a really highly sought-after feature for people. Now, I would assert at 125,000 miles and 10 years out, or whatever, I think you're going to probably have problems with that. And the headlight, if you were to hit something, has got to be really expensive. So something to consider there too, or you could just step up into a next size truck. But I think the biggest reason people are getting half tons is really thinking about their family. They're thinking about the comfort of a lot of small kids. Some small kids love climbing up into trucks. My daughter has no problem being up high in my truck, but I've seen kids not like climbing up into a truck. Maybe they're a little scared of heights or whatever. I've seen that before, where kids just don't really like big trucks. Some kids are absolutely in love with big trucks, and that's fine. And also older people tend to be very scared about anything that could potentially set them back in their recovery process or just in their life in general. So being very careful about who do you plan on bringing with you, or are you constantly bringing your in-laws or your parents to doctor's appointments. For a lot of people who are buying half tons, that is something that they're considering. Or if they have, whether themselves or their wife have a mobility issue of any type, half tons definitely tend to be catered awesome to those people. I would say one thing that I like about having a heavy duty truck is the view of the road ahead. I like feeling as high as we're sitting right now. This is a stock height F350 Super Duty, and it's on slightly bigger than stock tires, but this is a really tall truck. A half ton to equal this truck a current half ton would probably have 6 or 8 inches of lift to match the ride height of this truck. It is a rather large truck. It's a big step up. I wouldn't recommend having one of these without some sort of step bars. I put Tremor step bars on mine because they don't hang down as far, and they look really nice. They're very well built. But even with the Tremor step bars, I think a lot of people, and especially people who are older or have injury, would consider this truck too high for them to want to get into on a regular basis. So I know my mom does not appreciate getting into this truck. My mom is a smaller lady, as in she's like 5'2", and she does not like getting into my truck at all. And I think that it's scared her before, because falling, when you're a little bit older, is not a good situation to happen. So a lot of people are buying the half tons for that reason. A lot of people are trying to tow, I think, at their maximum capability. Be so careful. With a half ton, in my experience, anything over 7,000 pounds, you are working a half ton. You're working its brakes. You're working its drive line heavily, and it's not necessarily optimized for that. I would say anything less than 7,000 pounds, 5,000 to 6,000 pound camper is going to be right in the ballpark for a half ton. Anything bigger than that, I think, is really going to start taking over the truck a little bit and throwing it around. And again, with equipment trailers, staying under 7,000 pounds really helps a half ton be comfortable and easy for you to manage, even if their towing capacity is rated at 9,000, 10,000, 12,000 pounds. I remember my dad's 2007 Duramax be an LBZ Duramax. This was this was a classic, not an 07.5. With a Duramax. Duramax only ever came with in pickup trucks 373 gears, and it was a 250 or 2500, and it was rated for 12,000 pounds gooseneck and conventional hitch. And we have half tons now that are rated for what that Duramax was rated for. However, I would love to put 12,000 pounds behind that Duramax. I would not like to put 12,000 pounds behind any half ton. So that disclaimer I want to put out there, because do you agree with me? Do you think 12,000 pounds you might feel a little bit over your head in a half ton?
I'm pretty sure my truck is rated for 13.
13? Holy mackerel! We're gonna have to look at that, because I thought the Ford was kind of leading the pack around 13.7, which I think is a scary number.
I don't know.
13.7 behind a Ford F-150. Ugh. I don't know that I want to do that. I think that you would be feeling it. He's going to look it up really quick. One final thought, as he's really quickly looking up his towing capacity, is... So my final thought on this is, what is your mix of your uses? So many outdoorsmen prefer half tons because they're lighter. They don't get stuck as easily as an HD truck with the same set of tires on it. They can run cheaper tires that are highway tires and still perform well off-road. A lot of hunters, a lot of camping people, and a lot of fishermen really like half tons. And if you're using it for that purpose, you're generally going to be in that 7,000 pound or less life cycle for the truck. And you also may not be towing super often. A lot of people have half tons when they don't tow a lot. And I think that is a breakover for me, is that if you're using the truck for its bed, which of course, a lot of people aren't putting things that require a forklift to go into their bed, into their pickup truck, for good reason. When you load something that heavy in your truck, you're almost guaranteed to sometime make a mistake and tear up your bedside. Did you find the number, Bob?
12.75.
12.75. Good Lord, that's a lot of weight. Should we load up the equipment trailer with Alex's skid steer and go for a rip and see how your truck does, Bob?
Here we go.
All right. Well, maybe we'll make a video of taking his truck to 12,750. I will say the ZF8 will for sure handle that. The Dodge, specifically for that transmission, as we all know, Dodges in the past are notoriously terrible transmissions, but the ZF8 is not one of them. It is a wonderful transmission. Definitely, in my opinion, more sought after than a lot of transmissions out there. For sure, the 6-speed GMs and the 6R80 Fords. 6R80 Fords, I mean, I think they're pretty good transmissions, but they definitely have the capability to have problems, especially over 125,000 miles. I've heard a lot of people, my friends that have F-150s, they tend to not have them very long. I've noticed F-150s tend to fall apart really fast. At least with my friends. Now, maybe my friends are too abusive. It's always a possibility. I got to run, one of the kind of inspirations for this video, I guess, of tossing around. I have never been a Toyota Tundra fan. I've never really been in one. Until I was in one, and I was kind of impressed with it. I think the goofy looking rear doors are pretty stupid, but the truck itself seemed pretty good to me. My future father-in-law drives a Toyota Tundra Pace truck. It's like a Virginia International Raceway Pace truck or something like that. This is interesting. Anyway, it has a 5.7 dual overhead cam. I mean, that's interesting alone. 4-valve dual overhead cam, 5.7 V8 that Toyota makes. As far as I know, it's a pretty reliable engine. And it had the 5-speed. And I know people kind of give Toyota a hard time about antiquated powertrains, and I've been that person before. But I will say that the combination worked exceedingly well together. Now, he has it to tow around a smaller dump trailer because he has a landscape business in Virginia, and he's an avid fisherman, so small boats, a small fishing boat, and going regularly fishing, taking the truck to tracking to find ponds and rivers to fish on. So he's using the truck like that, and he loves his Toyota Tundras. I think he has 4 of them now. I think one has become a parts truck, and the other 2 are like his employee vehicles that they use to tow around landscape stuff, and then he has his truck that he uses too. Him and I went fishing on the Maumee River for a couple days with him, and I was exceedingly impressed with the comfort, with the passenger seat room, and with the engine sounded good. It ran really well, very smooth, and the 5-speed was really right there too. So definitely I was very intrigued by, if you're not going to tow a lot, that might be a really good opportunity for 4-wheel drive and a pickup bed in an excellent truck for an outdoorsman, I think. I'm trying to remember, Bob, have you gone camping in your truck at all, or done anything like that lately, or at all since you got your new truck?
I have not.
You have not. Well, we're going to have to take your truck out, and we're going to have to do a impromptu camping trip with your truck and kind of
Yes.
try that out, and maybe get it up to tracking, maybe not too much, because Bob is very particular about keeping his truck nice, which he should. It is important to, if you're going to have an investment that you really care about, to not put Michigan pinstripes down the side, something that I've been guilty of several times before in my life with other vehicles. I am trying my darndest to not to put any Michigan pinstripes on this truck. So I will try not to be too forceful about any off-roading. They have, or half tons these days, they're kind of impressive in terms of how far they've come. Half tons of the previous, like my 2001 Chevy GMT 800, it has kind of weak brakes, tiny axle, not a whole lot of power, though the 5.3 has a lot of potential with some modifications with a tune and with maybe a better transmission behind it. These new half tons have much bigger brakes, much better cooling systems, much stronger transmissions, and the rear axles are definitely upgraded, I believe. And I'm stepping out of bounds here because I'm not a Dodge expert. I think they use a 9.75 ring gear axle in that heavier weight class Ram truck. I think it's a 9.75 axle. Pretty sure it's a semi-float 9.75, but I could be wrong. You guys that are Dodge experts could potentially chime in, but as far as I know, it's a fairly strong transmission, or fairly strong rear end that doesn't give a lot of problems, and I think a lot of people tend to hot rod around Dodges, and I don't hear very often of rear axle failures like I do hear all the time with Ford 8.8s and 9.75 Ford axles that are in the F-150. I have a buddy who went through two 9.75 Ford rear axles in his ownership of his truck. Not very impressed with that axle. It sounds like they may have some quality issues. And the 8.8, as remarkable as it is in lighter vehicles, I think it's getting pretty taxed in a half ton, especially if you use it or if you're abusive to it off-road. It's definitely not a terribly huge axle. Obviously, it can be upgraded, and it is phenomenal when you put it into lighter vehicles like a Jeep. Not sure it's the best thing for an F-150. So, let me know if I touched any points that made you guys either happy, angry, sad, or any other direction, and let me know how I did, and if it helped your buying process a little bit. We go into a little bit more depth in other videos on specifically what the Super Duty has to offer, but I wanted to explore a little bit about half-ton ownership with someone who does own a half-ton, and a lot of people aren't towing every single day or very often, and perhaps aren't towing as much. And for that reason, getting 4-wheel drive, a perfectly adequate pickup bed, and more than enough payload to be able to pick up appliances and to go camping and to do things like that. So, I'm trying to... They had the... This was the other way the detour went, so we're going to go this way because this is the way I want to go. I don't know. They have everywhere in our county, there is construction going on as of late. It is maddening. You can't go anywhere without having construction somewhere. So, thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoyed the video a little bit, and if it raised any more questions about half tons and their application thereof, let me know. Perhaps we could see Bob's Ram 1500 on the channel more, or perhaps we should do a walk around video of it because it is a super nice truck. And maybe when I'm with my father-in-law, I can get him to do a walk around video and talk about how much he likes Toyotas, which I know he has a whole lot to say about how much he likes Toyotas. So we will, as always, there are more videos to follow. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.